June 10, 1912, the night Villisca, Iowa, lost its innocence. A quiet town, just a small speck on the map, where everyone knew everyone, and no one locked their doors. The streets were peaceful, the church bells steady, and the people faithful. But as night fell that summer evening, something far older than evil came to the edge of town, waiting for the lights to go out. The Moore family was well-loved: Josiah, his wife Sarah, and their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul. That Sunday had been full of laughter, church services, a Children's Day program, and the happy chatter of neighbors filled the air. Afterward, the Moores invited 2 friends, the Stillinger girls, Lena and Ina, to spend the night. The house was small but warm, filled with the smell of fresh soap and the sound of children's giggles echoing from upstairs. When the family returned from church, the clock had just passed 10 p.m. The oil lamps flickered softly as Sarah tucked the children into bed. Josiah checked the doors, though no one ever locked them, then blew out the lamps one by one until only the faint moonlight bathed the house in silver. It should have been another peaceful night, but someone was already inside. Later, investigators would find a cigarette but in the attic, a sign that someone had been waiting there, silent, patient, listening. The family's laughter, their prayers, the final quiet of sleep, all of it heard by someone holding an axe. At around midnight, the house held its breath. Then, the sound of creaking wood, a slow, deliberate step down the narrow staircase. The man moved carefully, every step heavy and measured. His hands gripped the axe tighter. In the dark, he could hear the faint breathing of those sleeping below, soft, rhythmic, unaware. He entered the master bedroom first. Josiah Moore was lying on his back. The killer raised the axe high and brought it down with a force that split silence itself. Once, twice, again, and again. The blows were savage, so brutal that the axe blade embedded into the wall above the bed. Sarah never woke. Her final breath came between 2 heartbeats, before the darkness claimed the house entirely. But it didn't stop there. One by one, the killer moved through the home, striking without mercy. Each room, each bed, each small body sleeping peacefully until it was too late. No screams, no time to run, only the echo of death against wood and bone. When it was over, he covered every mirror and every window with cloth, as if to hide from something unseen. Then he placed a slab of bacon on the floor beside the axe, wiped his hands on a piece of clothing, and vanished into the dawn. Morning came, and Villisca woke to stillness. The Moore house, usually filled with life, was silent. The milk delivery boy knocked, waited, and left. By noon, neighbors began to worry. Mary Peckham, the Moore's next-door neighbor, walked over. She knocked. No answer. She called their names. Silence. When she tried the door, it was locked. Strange for the Moores. She fetched Josiah's brother, Ross, who forced his way inside. What he found would scar the town forever. The air was thick, unmoving, heavy with the metallic scent of blood. Every curtain drawn, every lamp dim. In the master bedroom, Josiah and Sarah, motionless beneath blood-soaked sheets. Upstairs, the children. Downstairs, the Stillinger girls. But there was something worse, something that no one could explain. Lena, the older Stillinger girl, appeared to have woken up. Her small body was twisted, one hand stretched out, as if she'd seen something or someone. There were marks on her arm, as though she had tried to fight back. But her eyes were open. When the sheriff entered, he stepped out moments later and vomited into the dirt. News spread like wildfire. Reporters flooded the tiny town. Thousands came to stare, to whisper, to speculate. The newspapers called it the most brutal murder in Iowa history. But to the people of Villisca, it was worse than that. It was a curse. For weeks, no one slept. Doors stayed locked. Fathers kept watch through the night. Children woke screaming from nightmares of a tall shadow holding an axe at the foot of their bed. Rumors grew. Some said it was a stranger who came in on the night train. Others whispered it was someone from town, someone who knew them. But there was one detail no one could ignore. The mirrors covered with cloth, the lamps dimmed, the windows draped. like the killer was hiding not from the police, but from something else. As the days turned to years, the murders were never solved. The suspect list grew, but so did the fear. The Moore house remained empty, abandoned, left to rot. Locals said it was cursed, that the air inside was wrong, thick, buzzing with something that never left. And then came the noises. Children walking past swore they heard footsteps from inside, even though the house was locked tight. At night, oil lamps on nearby porches flickered on their own. Dogs wouldn't go near the property, and if you stood by the window long enough, they said you could hear it. Faint, rhythmic, unmistakable. The sound of an axe sliding across the wooden floor. No one wanted to believe it, but those who entered swore that the temperature dropped instantly, that whispers filled the air, and that somewhere deep within the house, someone was still breathing. The town tried to move on, but Villisca never forgot. Every June, when the night grows long and the crickets go quiet, you can feel it, a stillness that doesn't belong. The air grows heavy, and the shadows stretch too far. Some say it's the memory of that night replaying itself. Others say it's the killer, condemned to relive what he did for eternity. But one thing is certain, the house is not empty. It never was. As night fell once again over the house in Green Street, Janet lay awake, staring into the shadows. Her breathing quickened as the wardrobe door began to tremble ever so slightly. Peggy, exhausted from sleepless nights, tried to convince herself it was just the wind, until a heavy knock echoed from within the walls. 3 knocks, then silence, then 3 more. The investigators from the Society for Psychical Research had returned, this time with advanced equipment, cameras, tape recorders, and temperature gauges. As they set up, the air turned icy, their breath visible despite the heater running full blast. One of the men whispered, "It feels like it knows we're here." Moments later, a chair slid across the floor by itself, scraping against the wooden boards in a slow, dreadful sound that seemed almost deliberate. They captured Janet speaking again in that gravelly, deep voice, a tone that no one believed a child could produce. "This is my house," the voice said, guttural and angry. "Get out." The room temperature dropped by 10 degrees in seconds. The researchers froze. Their equipment recorded the sounds, but the chilling atmosphere was beyond explanation. Then, one of the officers saw it. A figure standing in the corner, barely visible, a black mass that pulsed like smoke, its outline shifting as if feeding on the fear that filled the air. The figure moved toward the children's bed, and before anyone could react, Janet was thrown against the wall by an unseen force. Her mother screamed, clutching her rosary, yelling for it to stop. In panic, one of the investigators shouted, "In the name of God, reveal yourself." The lights flickered, picture frame crashed from the wall, and then silence. Janet fell limp, unconscious, her pulse faint, her body cold. When she finally awoke hours later, she whispered something that made the entire room go still. He said, "It's not over." Weeks later, the activity subsided, but not completely. The family moved, and for years after, the haunting followed them in whispers, dreams, and unseen touches in the dark. The recordings from that house remain some of the most terrifying ever documented in paranormal history. And to this day, skeptics still argue whether it was all real or the most elaborate haunting ever fabricated. But those who were there, they never doubted. The house in Enfield changed them forever. If you've made it this far, you've walked through the same darkness that haunted the Hodgson family, the same fear that crept into every corner of their home. But this was only a glimpse of what lies beyond the veil. The Enfield haunting may have ended on paper, but what if I told you that spirits like it never really leave? That somewhere, right now, another family is hearing the same knocks, the same whispers, the same voice that said, "It's not over. You think you're safe because you're just watching a story." But that's how it always begins. Every haunting starts with curiosity. And curiosity always opens doors that were never meant to be opened. There are far darker tales waiting. Possessions more violent, hauntings that drove people to madness, and spirits so ancient they've forgotten what peace feels like. If you're brave enough, stay close, because in the next story, you won't just hear the fear, you'll feel it. Subscribe now, turn on the notification bell, and don't look away, because the next time something moves in the corner of your room, it might not be the wind. The darkness is waiting, and the only way out is through the next story.